Hooey, what's up, Airheads? We're back once again. We're in the virtual Airstream studios. You've got a bit of a harried version of both me and Cho at present, though for different reasons. I've been traveling all day. My flight was delayed. I very nearly didn't make it. Had to run across the airport. About had a heart attack. Had to get home, run out back, set everything up, hop on here. I'm in a big ass rush, but I'm sitting down now. I've made a drink, chilling out, and hoping to have a good time on this episode. Cho, though, is harried for a much more profound reason, as I'm sure many of y'all are probably aware if you follow him on Twitter or social media and stuff. Cho got a baby finally, little baby Cho in the house. Well, I don't know if you want me to say his full name or
Yeah, I don't
not or
care.
whatever. Little Jansen Bain has
Well,
arrived.
I said his name. I said his name on the internet because I was making the proclamation and announcing to everyone the 2044 Masters champion, Jansen Bain, Forrester.
Yeah, I was when I first got popular on the internet. I was getting so much hate, full mess, like death threats and all this stuff that, like,
I'm worried about it.
As you probably recall, I was like, and I'm still fairly private about my sons, but I've lessened up on it a little bit. But as you remember, like at that point in time, I wouldn't put no pictures with them up on any of my things. I wouldn't say their names. I wouldn't talk about, like, I shielded them very much because, like I said, I was getting some wild messages and stuff. So, but 7 years on, I've sort of, gotten over that to a little extent.
No, I don't.
Knock on wood.
No, I don't think you're wrong, though, because I actually brought all that up to Amber because we were so excited when the baby was born, and I wanted everybody to see. Because, like, dude, I get proud easy, but I look at what just happened. I see my baby, and I was like, I've never actually been proud of anything in my life until now. You know what I mean? Like, this is, and I wanted fucking everybody to see it. Me and Amber, it took us 5 years to have it. It was just like the summation of just a wonderful journey that a lot of people had followed me on through, like my stand-up bits and everything. And I wanted everybody to see it. And then right after I posted that, I started thinking about you and all the shit. Like, you've told me that shit before. And I was like, oh man, I think this might be the last time that ever happens.
I mean, nothing ever like happened. Well, I mean, part because I kept them,
shield them from the world, right?
I shielded them from the world. But I'm saying nobody ever showed up at my house or nothing. Again, knock on wood. Like, I never had any real incidents. It's just that, like, some of the feedback I was getting in messages and stuff had me freaked out about that, and so I'd tell people I had kids, but I wouldn't say nothing about them publicly.
Yeah. And I've only been a dad for less than a week, but I already have a new perspective on not taking chances, even if the chances are slim. You know what I mean? Like, just because, like, when it comes to the kid, just because someone goes, oh, that'll probably never happen. Right now, at least in my early stages of being a father, I go, but you're telling me there's a chance. Therefore, I'm not fucking, doing that shit. So, like, I'm playing it by the book, boy. And yeah, I'm tired. I'm super tired. And Trey, I want to say this. 2 less men would have just not done the show tonight, But we're not those people because we love putting on airs. I'm on like, I think 10 hours combined in like 4 or 5 days of sleep. And I told my wife, I said, baby, I know it's not going to hit for you that I take a little break to go up and record a podcast, but it is my job. And frankly, it is nice to sit here and talk to you and have a drink. And, it's great.
I'd like to tell you that gets better, that part of it, but it may not for quite some time.
Yeah, that's okay.
Because I have both experiences. I've said that, I'm sure you've heard me say this too, but my line to people always was, because this is how I felt. I was like, because not all babies are different, and I used to tell people, I was like, if
some of them are Chinese.
Some of them are Chinese. That's right. Some of them are Jamaican, all kinds of babies out there, all very different. But I used to tell people, I was like, if my first baby had been the type of baby that my second baby was, then my second baby might not have existed because and now they're both great. They're the furthest. They're 10 and 11 now, and they're both awesome. But like, they were very different as babies. Like, I had a real skewed perspective on the early stages of parenting because Bishop, my oldest one, my first baby, dude,
So good.
he slept. He literally, if he wasn't, sucking on the titty or a bottle or getting his diaper changed, if he wasn't doing one of those two things, he was just asleep. Like
Yeah.
he was a dream, but I had no frame of reference. He was the only baby I had, but like he slept all the time. He wasn't a big crier, whatever. And so I always thought I was like, what's everybody fucking complaining about? It's like,
Yeah.
I've binged Breaking Bad. I've done a whole
Yeah.
Skyrim playthrough.
Yeah.
This has been great. This ain't bad at all. Then we had the next one 13 months later. And of course, that's part of it too, is that when the second one came out,
Yeah.
we had a
You still,
toddler.
exactly.
Right. And that's part of it. But the second one, the younger one, he was a completely different story. He was like, yeah, he was awake every 2 hours for the first 6 months of his life or whatever. And I was like, oh, now I get it. This is a whole thing right here. Another
Yeah.
thing I've always wondered is like, I've never been an overly energetic feller. Anybody who knows me
Yeah.
knows that. But I was in my early to mid 20s at that time.
Right. You could play chin strap.
Right. But one thing I've always thought, I get why people wait. It's logical and reasonable to wait in the world we live in now. But like biologically speaking, I don't think there's any argument that we're all meant to
Agreed.
have children at a much earlier
Yeah,
age.
yeah.
And one of the things I've always thought was like that era when I had a newborn who was up all the time and a 13-month-old running roughshod over my whole existence, right? I was 25, 26.
Yeah, right.
And I've thought like, now that I'm 36, almost 37, I've been like, dude, if that was happening right now, I don't know how I'd be able to handle that
because that's what I'm doing,
and that's what you're doing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but I will counter to that with the one perk is that if I'd have had this baby when I was 25, I would have actually had a very substantial lifestyle change. But now here's the thing that's hard. It's literally just the sleep deprivation that I'm struggling with because everything else, like he is an easy baby. Like he does just sleep and cries when he wants to eat. But because he came a little bit early, we're having to be real strict on when we feed him and stuff. And I have made it a point to be with Amber along the whole ride because she had, and this is no secret, she had a C-section. So like it's harder to bounce back from that. You know what I mean? So like I do need to be there to like hold the baby when she's pumping after she breastfeeds and stuff. And I've made it a point, like I think I've told you this. I don't know if all of it is because I'm a good person. I think most of it is because I'm very competitive and I want her to go to school and tell all her teachers how great of a husband I am so that their husbands look like pieces of shit. Like I'm going hard in the paint. You know what I mean? Like but also at first I thought it was that, but then I kept going and I realized, oh my God, I'm doing this because I fucking love this baby. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to leave him. Like I said, it's nice to be with you right now. And it really is. And she's got some family down there, but at the same time, I'm not going to lie. I really would rather be sitting there holding my child. Well, and that's going to be really hard for me.
You said you're like, if this happened when I was 20 something, the lifestyle change would have been huge. It's not really that bad right now. It's just sleep deprivation. And I immediately thought, I mean, you're still a comedian, right? When you like you said, I don't want to be away from him. You're going to have to be. Stretches of time. And like that shit is hard. Bro, it's real hard. I mean, you saw me going through how burnout I got and how much it affected me and everything. And
they weren't even babies, you know, like, but
I feel like babies would almost be easier. Than like, they were still young enough. They were still young enough that they never remembered anything different than me being a comedian. So
that's what I meant was like,
but they were old enough to be like, are you leaving again? Daddy don't go. That type of thing. Like, whereas a baby ain't going to do that, you know?
Well, that's fair. But when I said no lifestyle change, I wasn't factoring in what my normal lifestyle is. I meant the current one I have because I did actively take a lot of time off because I wanted to be there during the pregnancy to help Amber. And I wanted to make sure that I was here during this time. So I've actually gotten used to a kind of between comedy tours lifestyle where I don't go nowhere. I like to stay home. And when we're not touring, I don't leave my fucking house. You know that. I don't go to bars. I don't go hang out with my buddies. So it's
Yeah,
like
me neither.
you're telling me that I have to just sit here and watch the Marvel movies again, but with a cool, awesome thing on my lap? This is amazing.
I actually just started writing a bit. So you tell me if you know if anybody has this bit. So I've I've never really written much kids stuff, but I'm trying to put like a kids chunk together
But now that
now
you know
and
that
see
I'm
how
going
it
to be
goes.
opening for you doing 45 of it, you're like,
Now
I got to get some.
the truth is I've got a show in LA that's like
Yeah.
parenting themed. And so I was like, well, that'll be a good excuse for me to write parenting material because I never have ever. And part of the reason was always because like I feel like most of the comics, and they're great comics and they're great bits, many
They
of which
shit
I
on 'em.
love and laugh at, but the prevailing wisdom amongst comedians is
swear to
like
God.
comics are all like, oh, they're little fun vampires. They sap your life essence. They
I know
murder
what
your
you're about to
youth. They
pitch
kill you.
me. And I know what you're about to pitch
well,
me. And I'm so fucking mad because I had this idea 5 years ago, but I didn't have a kid and I didn't
well,
do it.
I
Are
don't
you going to
think.
do the thing where you do the positive shit?
Well, yeah, I mean, yes. So
That's great.
I'm currently trying to write a whole little chunk about how much it rules, right?
Yeah,
To
right.
be like, because
I
I just
love that.
feel like you don't ever see that. And one of the things that I had in mind was you're talking about, oh, I sit at home, I don't do nothing anyway. And you're about to find out. I mean, I'm sure you already recognize, but like one of the things I want to talk about is that like kids are a cheat code for getting out of shit, which
Yes,
is
dude. That's my
incredible
favorite
when
thing.
you're in your
Yeah.
when you're in your 30s and stuff. Like you got some bullshit second cousin's bridal shower or like, your wife's coworker's birthday party or something like that. You don't want to do that shit. You want to sit at home doing stuff, don't hit. Sit at home hits. And when you got kids, it's automatic, dude. Like you just tell them, like all the
And
kids,
people ain't even mad.
right? No, they're not. But the ones that don't have kids, they're telling everybody else, like, poor bastard, man, he can't ever do nothing because that kid. But you're sitting at home in your sweatpants, like,
that's
like
dude,
it's fucking great. I love it.
I've had this back and forth with one of my buddies all week, and it's the same thing you're describing where he's texting me, and I do love golf, don't get me wrong, but he's texting me like pictures of him on the golf course, his rounds or whatever. He's like, what I'm doing while you're at home parenting, LOL. And in his mind, he's like, I'm making him jealous, he wants to do this. I'm rubbing it in because pitiful Corey. And I'm and I get it because he don't have kids. And
exactly
2 weeks ago, I would have thought the same thing. But I'm sitting here going like, you just don't know how much better of a time I'm having. Like,
that's what I'm saying.
And this is the hardest part, and I'm having a blast.
I'm hoping to get at that exact thing because that is exactly how it is. Like people without kids, they really think they're like, oh, like I said, a poor bastard.
Yeah.
Like you say, he thinks he's rubbing it in. Like while you're stuck at home being a dad, I'm doing this, and they genuinely don't realize that. Like, that hits for me. Like I wouldn't.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to trade places with you. As hard as that is for you to understand, I don't want to trade. But me and you are obviously in agreement. But that's part of. I always felt out of not out of touch, but like that there was a disconnect because like so many.
Yeah, comedians.
And it's not just comics. I had so many friends too. Some of the people I'm talking about who like you said earlier, like
they're divorced now.
I'm proud easy, but this was like the first thing I was really proud of. When I would say stuff like that, I had friends who also had kids, right? Who would be like, I would say something like, yeah, this is the only thing I've done that really means something to me, and they would be like, oh, you're full of shit. That's just what you're supposed to say. That ain't how you really feel. And it used to drive me crazy because I would always be like, okay, maybe you don't feel that way. I don't know why. I don't know what's different about it for you, but like, I promise you, I really do, and so I've just always felt disconnected from the generally accepted funny narrative about having kids is like how much they ruin your whole life.
I still
like those jokes and I still like
those
comics. I just never had any interest in doing any of that kind of material.
Me either.
So now I'm currently trying to write a chunk that's like that. And I'm glad I brought it up on here because now that I brought it up on here, people come see me live.
I can't do it. Yeah.
I'll have to. No, I have to now.
For the record, mine,
a little bit of it.
For the record, I'd had the same idea, but it wasn't about kids because I didn't have kids then. It was about my wife and I've talked about this on my podcast before, over at parttimefunnyman.com, about how, granted, we've only been married for 5 years, but like I've got buddies who they've been married a year, and the way they talk about their wife, you'd think they'd been married for 35 years and she'd cheated
Right.
on him 8 times. And I'm like, bro, if you're like that after a year, because I'm like, a lot of my friends don't understand. I married my wife for this crazy reason. I like spending time with her and I love her. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? And we have arguments, of course, but like, so when me and Amber first got married a couple years in, I was like, I want to do the Ray Romano, all that stuff, except for about how awesome my wife was. But then, we were married a little bit longer and it just kind of, soured. But,
I mean, I
but
love doing those types of jokes with you and and Drew and Mark, like all my
yeah,
married
dude, of
buddies.
course. But I know
Like
we're
that's
just
fun
shitting.
to do, but yeah, dude,
Dude,
I have no desire to
I shit
be
on
single
Amber.
or not
I
be married.
Yeah, dude. I shit on Amber in the thread all the time because we're 4
Right.
married dudes and that's what you do. But
That's
like,
just what you do,
y'all know
and it's
that's just
fun.
what you do. But like, and I fucking share the best ones with her. But like,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, I'm choosing to be with her and shit. And this is not thematic to this show, but we are talking about babies. And I want to tell this, if this is the last thing we talk about, my experience as in early fatherhood, it is this. One thing that hit me, and it wasn't immediately, but it was probably early yesterday morning after the sleep deprivation really started to kick in, and I'm kind of getting delirious, and like it's really weird for those of you that don't have kids. I don't know. It doesn't hit, to me at least. It doesn't hit you for the first 2 days that that's your fucking kid. You keep seeing this baby, like they
Yeah.
keep bringing this baby in,
Well,
and then
I think we talked about it on Well Read. I think for women that's different because that baby's been inside them
they have
for
a
a long
9
time.
months head start. Yeah,
But for men, yes, it's 100% like that. It does.
yeah,
That's why I was telling on on an episode of Well Read. I think I was telling you like I think for guys it takes some time to actually like set in,
yeah.
because you haven't had 9 months of it being inside you and everything like she has. So it is
Yeah,
different.
it feels like a dream. Like it feels like a dream. But then like we got home and then I slept with him a bunch. And again, I'm really around this motherfucker. I mean, I've been around him 24 hours for almost a week. So like we know each other now. And I'm really, I've cried a couple times. I've been overcome with emotion. And here's what I want to say. I've never been fond of deadbeat dads and
Oh,
fond of dudes
buddy,
who walk out.
I know,
I've never been fond of those dudes, sure, but
but you want
now more
nothing
than
to do
ever,
with them now, right?
dude, I can't fathom it. It's what
I
it is.
know, I
I
know.
can't like
I
like at first I was like, okay, yeah, you don't want the responsibility or whatever, dude. I'm one of the laziest sacks of shit who just loves to do his own thing on the planet. I I can't let this motherfucker go. And like,
Mhm.
I'm looking at him and like, dude, I was telling my sister-in-law this today. I go, dude, for the first time in my fucking life, all of my dreams are now suggestions. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
right.
I still very much want them, but like, and this will go away, I'm sure. But like I was telling Amber, I said, if someone tomorrow came up to you and said, Amber, we really think you have good managerial skills and we would like you to take over this Fortune 500 company and we're going to pay you $2 million a year. For the first time in my life, I would go, I'll not work. I'll fucking stay home. You know what I mean? Because it was like, I don't understand how someone could look. I don't get it, man. Maybe if they walked out the first day before it all set in, I can kind of comprehend it. But I do not understand how a motherfucker could be with something like that and then go, not for me. Like, dude,
Yeah,
it's unfathomable to me.
I know exactly what you mean. Nothing on earth makes me lose respect for a man
Yeah,
quicker than
yeah.
finding out they have a kid that they don't really have
They don't
much to
fuck
do
with.
with. Yeah, like
I don't.
and I've known guys. I've met guys in
Me
comedy and other
too.
ways that
Yeah.
like who I thought were super rad or super funny or whatever, and then I find that out, and I'm immediately like, oh damn, man, that like
I will
I just
say,
they just immediately pale in my eyes, the estimation of them.
yeah, I'll tell you that something's clearly wrong with them. So maybe I can have some sympathy because like there's something off because I just don't see how you could even make the choice. You know what I
Me
mean?
neither. I
Like
know.
I'm
That's
in
what I'm saying.
love with this motherfucker. I'm
Right.
in
It's just
love
I
with
know.
this
I
motherfucker.
I don't understand how you could not feel it either. I've always thought that, but we should probably move on,
Do
get
the
into some
show. Yeah.
POA type stuff. I hope that
Yeah.
wasn't too saccharine for people. It's an emotional time right now, guys. I'm
It
sure,
is.
So, 20 minutes in, I'll say what we're going to be talking about tonight is Venn diagram for me. I'm talking about lawns/yards. Obviously, one's fancy, the other one ain't. We'll talk about them a little bit later. And then Corey's got Professor Cho on the subject of Nebuchadnezzar, right?
King Nebuchadnezzar. Yes. Was
Yeah,
lawns my suggestion?
yeah, it was one of yours. You gave me a bunch of suggestions, and I'm going to
I'm
use
so
all of them,
happy.
I think,
Yeah.
because I was running low. So thank you.
Yeah, King
But first,
Nebuchadnezzar.
and I guess briefly, since we're already 20 minutes in, so
Do your thing.
I flew back from Bozeman, Montana today. It was my first time in Bozeman. I went up there to do a podcast, a different podcast should come out soon. I mean, hell, I guess I could say it. Should I say it? It
Yeah,
ain't come
you
out
did
yet. What do
it.
you think?
You went and did it.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to shit can the episode. That would be wild if they did. But yeah, I did the
Unless
meat
Bernie
eater.
Sanders wants to go and they snub you.
I did the Meat Eater podcast, which is huge in the sportsman and outdoors people world. And I was like, when they asked me to do it, I was like, you sure you got the right guy? Cause I know how I sound, but, yeah, I'm not, I don't know if you know this, but I am not a man, and you guys are into man stuff. But yeah, we had a great time. Steve Ranella, the host of it, he's a great dude. And it was wonderful, but they flew me up to Bozeman and put me up there for a couple of days. And I'd never been up there. And it's beautiful. And like, obviously, especially ever since Yellowstone come out, right?
Yeah.
Everybody know about Montana and stuff. But one thing I just want to bring up briefly to you and see how you feel about it is like, there's this big trend going on for the past few years now, but it really cranked up in COVID. I feel like where like fancy people, or at the very least, people with money are
Yeah.
like taking over these places, these like nice places that they find out about because they see them on Instagram or whatever. And Bozeman's a great example, but like what used to be a hidden gem, right? Because Bozeman's
Yeah.
up there in the Rocky Mountains. It's fucking beautiful, right? But now people that are from Bozeman are being priced out of being able to live there because of all these like San Francisco or California, people with California money coming up there because, the cost of living's cheaper and it's great and whatever else. And it's like kind of ruining these places, and Bozeman's just
Yeah.
one of them. But
It's exactly
how
what
you
we
feel about
did to the Native Americans. A bunch of rich people from one place saw a place and was like, my God, that hits. They moved in and made everybody else leave and then ruined the fucking place. So from that point of view, I'm like, yeah, it really sucks when that happens. But like from the other point of view, I go, well, what's the point of having money if you can't move somewhere that hits? You know what I'm
sure. And
saying?
I kept feeling when I was up there, like I was like, because they'll literally say, people in Bozeman will say something like they'll reference the California people, or they'll be like,
Yes. Yes.
it's one of these places that caters to the California crowd, right? It's California is like the go-to example of the people that are running over Bozeman, right? And so like I kept wanting to be like if someone's like, where are you coming in from? I was like, Los Angeles, but like I'm from Tennessee, just so you know.
I'm doing the
Like,
show.
not only am I from Tennessee, I wanted to be like, I'm from Tennessee, and also I'm a fucking white trash piece of shit. Like I'm bringing no money to your economy. I'm no class, nothing. Just so you know, I'm not here to ruin anything. Like,
Yeah,
matter of
right.
fact, y'all probably shouldn't even let me in. You know what I mean? Like, but I was like self-conscious about that because it's like such a thing up there or whatever. And also another thing I'll tell you about Bozeman won't surprise you at all. White, boy,
Yeah,
is it
boy.
white.
Oh, yeah.
Lord of mercy, is it a white ass place. Got a lot of white stuff going on. But beautiful. Even the
Me
mountains
and
are white.
me and me and you talked about this um, because either you had a bit about it or it was a remark you made to somebody. But when we were talking about how when because I worked at Yellowstone for a minute, like a very brief minute, I worked as a chambermaid at the oldest hotel in Yellowstone, and every day I took care of the Dwight D. Eisenhower presidential suite. And while in Wyoming and the surrounding areas, it's the first time in my whole life that I didn't see a black person ever. because I'm from the South. Like, say what you want. Oh, the South is racist. We got them though.
All
Like
kinds of them.
yeah,
We
right.
got more of them than anybody. Not to brag, all right,
Yeah,
but
right. But
we got more of them than
we're
anybody.
not
All
going to
right.
get into why, but like we do have
yeah.
a ton.
Yeah.
It's
So many.
a mystery for the ages why, but we do have a lot. But like and so like it is crazy because like you go to those like if you look at Wyoming and Montana and like not the California people that move in, but the OGs that were there, these are rural areas where I met it. So I met a dude while I was there. He was from Washington State, but the rural part of Washington State, and me and him who are from completely different sides of the country had more in common with each other than me and someone from Atlanta who is 2 hours
Right.
away from me, right? So
Right.
so like culturally, the
Absolutely.
Wyoming and the Montana people are exactly like us.
Yes.
So you see them
Right.
and then they have the fucking audacity to say some shit like all those backward people in the South. And it's
They do.
just like,
I
yeah,
know. We
okay.
we we kind of got into that a little bit on the podcast. Again, it was very warm and welcome. There's no hostility whatsoever, but like they wanted to talk to me a lot about the South and stuff and how different it is culturally and all this type of shit. And I was happy to do that. But at one point, I kind of said, I was like, well, honestly, guys, like I know y'all don't have the accent, like you got the northern accent or whatever. I was like, but I feel like you guys would fit in great,
Of
like in
course.
where I'm from or wherever. I was like, because dude, there's so much cultural overlap. It's crazy. And I, elaborated on that some and talked about, cause yeah, I feel the same way, but it's like, it was kind of eye opening to me realizing it's like, even people, and this is not necessarily true across the board, obviously it's a generalization, but like even people who are into a lot of the same shit culturally, but are not from the South,
Yeah.
even a lot of those people are
Yeah.
kind of like the South. What's
Yes.
their whole deal? Like
I
what?
know.
Like what are they
I
about? And it's like,
know.
dude, they're about most of the same shit
Same
that you're
shit.
about, buddy. They
Different.
just got to draw with it. Like that's
Yeah.
like it's literally
And
it.
yes, they have a draw and they are the country's scapegoat for this is where all the bad people live, even
Mhm.
though people that vote the exact same way or feel the exact same way live in all these other places. It's just that they don't have somebody to call a slur into their face.
Yep.
But like,
Yep.
yeah, dude, like when I was in high school, we had this dude move from Wisconsin to Chickamauga, and everybody was like, this is the first time we're ever going to see a Yankee. And dude, this dude, because he grew up in rural Wisconsin, he put everyone there to fucking shame with how red he was. It's just that he talked like this, don't you know, and blah 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 or
Right.
whatever. And like, it's just a bummer that guy who was equally as fucking dumb as everyone I knew, if went somewhere different, everybody would hear his accent and be like, he's probably okay. You know what I mean? Like, it just don't
Yeah.
hit.
No,
But
no, it don't hit. You're right, but
to
it
get
is what
back,
it another thing on the other end of the spectrum, though, is like, again, Yellowstone, great example, but this is also true in the South too, though. Like, there's, like, country or sort of red ass type
yeah,
people, but with money, right? Who have like
yes,
a lot of
yeah,
money and they have a lot of, and that's another thing too, like that I'll think sometimes it's like, me and you, we've talked about getting on horses in
yeah.
the UK or whatever, but not being versed in horses. And that's the type of thing I feel like people will see me, hear me talk or whatever and be like, well, he knows about horses.
Yeah.
But I want to be like, dude, you know how much fucking money horses cost?
Yes.
Like I have horse money. Like anybody that's like, really versed in horses. I mean, well, obviously there's people who work for people who own the horses. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The cowboys, the hands, the farm hands and stuff. Sure. But I'm saying like hardly nobody in Salina really had horse money. You know what I'm saying?
Dude,
Like horses ain't cheap, right? Or having a big ass farm and all that shit too, like real country stuff. But it's like my family couldn't afford a fucking farm, even if we wanted to be farmers. You know what I mean? Like it's
DJ used to have a bit about and I can't remember how the whole bit go, but it was basically like how he's like, somebody would accuse him of being redneck. Somebody from the north would accuse him of being a redneck. Goes, shit, I ain't redneck. Rednecks got money. I'm lower than that shit. As they were talking about having F-250s and boats and stuff like that, and he's like, no, no, no. The real fucking trash don't do none of that shit because that shit
Yeah.
costs fucking money. You know what I mean? There's
Right.
rich people
Yeah. No,
here.
he's so right. I mean, yeah, like I had thought, like, people calling to question my redneck credentials or whatever, which did not happen on the show or anything. But I've thought it's like, really, honestly, the more accurate representation is that I'm Southern white trash.
Exactly.
Really. You know what I mean? Which
Exactly.
to a lot of people equals redneck. And there's a lot of Southern white trash who identify as redneck. And so there's definitely, like, a lot of overlap there and everything. But that's a more accurate way to describe who I am and my background and everything, is that
Yeah.
I'm Southern white trash, really.
Yeah, because
And I know I say that as though someone else deemed me the liberal redneck, like that was my idea.
Yeah.
So I don't know who I'm railing against here, but yeah, that's the truth of it.
Yeah, I remember in part of DJ's bit, he was somebody was like, "Oh, you fucking Southern trash motherfuckers all shop at Walmart," and he's like, "Buddy, anybody that has money to shop at Walmart looks down on me. Do you understand?" But so going back to what you originally stated about, I guess this would be you usually only think about gentrification when it pertains to places like Bushwick and Brooklyn, where it's like sort of maybe a race thing. But like what's happening in Montana and all these places is like sort of a cultural gentrification thing.
Absolutely.
I mean, not sort of, it is, but like, it's really, to me, it's the symptom of when something that at first actually sounds like a really good idea comes to fruition and swells up. Because like Chattanooga, for instance, Chattanooga, which is a great city. It is constantly, and over the past 5 or 6 years, it's constantly been named as like one of the top 5 and 6 new cities to move to in the U.S. Well, buddy,
Right.
I'm here to tell you, and BPP's sitting here nodding his head. I know when I was a kid, Chattanooga was not a place that you fucked with or went. It wasn't. Like it was the city, and we're from rural where it's like the city, that's where all the drugs and the crime is, but like it was,
Mm-hmm.
and over the years, Chattanooga has gotten really gentrified, where a bunch of like apartment mogul people have bought up all this land that used to be public housing and poor housing or whatever, and have made these high rises in it. Rich people move in, and then the poor people have to go somewhere. And when it's on like at my point on it being the symptom of something that at first seems like a good idea, it's like everybody can get behind, let's clean this place up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Let's clean this place up, and also let's bring jobs to this area. Because like when it comes to Montana and stuff, with all these rich dudes coming in, it's like, oh, this is going to create a lot of jobs because these guys are going to want to come to the ranch and do the dude ranch shit. And like there is a brief moment right before what it is now happens where it's just great for everybody, where you're like, they're coming in and they're giving us all their fucking money, this is awesome. And then after that, you're like, holy shit, now they're taking all of our money. We don't have any fucking place to go.
Right. Yeah, man. I don't know. It's wild. There was a article in the New York Times even about like the influx of digital nomads, these people that work from home that got money, California money or whatever, into the area where I'm from. And it was specifically about Jackson County, which is the neighboring county to Salina. And on last episode we talked, and I mentioned, I was like, in Clay County, you're like, oh, Jackson County trash, right?
Right.
But it's
Yeah.
like, I don't think that the digital nomads have even made it to Salina yet. Like they got Jackson County first. You know what I mean?
Y'all got that lake.
But I know, yeah, I know.
And the largest mouth bass record.
The world record smallmouth bass. That's another thing. I said that on the podcast. I say it all the time, home of the world record smallmouth bass. I said it on that podcast, which is in part a fishing podcast. And then I was like, yeah, I think we got beat. We're no longer the record, but we were. Turns out we still are the record. So
nice.
I sent them according to Google, still the record. I sent them an email like 2 hours after I left because I Googled it. And I was like, hey, can y'all issue a correction for me? Because this is important. to me
Yeah.
and the people of Clay County. All right.
That would be the thing they
Like,
got mad at you for. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Like, I guess I just assumed that. The universe took that from us as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, no, it's all over the place, and part of me is like, well, how many of these people are there to leave these other places? If they're all leaving, why
Right.
is traffic on the 405 still terrible? And how many different places
Yeah.
can they
Right.
ruin? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you'd think there'd be an upper limit to it, but it seems to be
Of
an
course.
epidemic. I don't know. But all right. So with all that said, I guess we'll get into the show now at the 35-minute mark.
Yeah.
So I'm talking Venn diagram, fancy and trash overlap. They love grass at their house. Again, I want to say, because it's one of those things, like, for fancy people, it's a lawn, right?
Yeah. Right.
But for fucking rednecks, it's a yard, right? It ain't the lawn,
But
it's the
it's not
goddamn
yard
yard.
darts. That's the only time that rednecks call it a lawn is when it's referring
Yeah,
to
but
darts.
if somebody's like, "Where's the kids at?" They're not going to say, "Oh, they're out on the lawn." You
Hell
know what I
no,
mean?
they're in the
Like,
yard.
they're in the goddamn yard where they ought to be, right? Uh, so I started looking into this. Obviously, we're talking about the fancy stuff first. Do you know the origin of the lawn? Do you know anything about how the lawn came to be a thing
like
in
like a
society?
like a well constructed lawn, like a thing that's not just we just happen to have some grass.
Well, I mean, grass had to be like outside of like the savannas of Africa or whatever. You had to like make a conscientious choice to
That's
have
true.
grass
That's true.
surrounding your property, right?
Oh, okay.
Like it,
Is it
it don't just work like that. You got to make that happen. And do you
uh
know why people started making that happen?
okay? Is the answer happy or sad?
It's just very Raven. It's very typical when it comes to rich people. It's somewhat funny, I
so
would say.
they could because someone thought of polo or someone thought of
Well, it's weird
croquet.
you say that. So actually put a pin in that. I'll get back to
Okay.
what I was going to say a minute ago, but technically the first like expanses of like big areas of grass, they were because of sports,
Okay.
including early sports. Like,
Yeah.
people made an effort to make a big expanse of like maintained grass so that they could play early sports on them. The very first known reference to the act of sodding, so to
Yeah.
making like a big grassy area, was in Japan in 1159, actually, because
Really?
they were playing some kind of Japanese sport over there. I don't know, but then like cricket comes from the 1200s, 1300s, so
And that's
they would
India,
make.
right?
No, that was I don't know if it originated in England. England brought cricket to India when they took
Oh,
over and colonialized them, made them us and all that stuff.
well, see,
They
I
tried
just
to.
assumed it was the opposite. I assumed that India did it and they took it from them as they did everything else.
No, it went the other way around, actually,
I'll be
with cricket in
damned.
particular. But yeah, it's an English thing, and so the earliest known examples of, like I said, purposefully maintained areas of grass, right, were
Yeah.
for sports like cricket and whatever the hell else they were playing back then. But what I was getting at, the reason lawns became a thing was because, like with everything else, they were a status symbol.
Yes,
So
of course.
the wealthy classes, and they still are a status symbol, but they first landed on this idea in the 17th century, right? And the reason why is because they built castles were coming down. Obviously, they're ate up with castles over there. I'm not saying they're not, but like in like the 17th century, they started transitioning from like castles to like big, nice manor houses,
Yeah.
like Downton Abbey shit, right?
Yeah.
So they were the landed gentry's making these big manor houses. Part of it is they want everybody to see
Of course.
their manor house in all its glory. So you can't have a bunch of trees
Brushes.
and
Right.
brushes and crops and shit obscuring the
Right.
view of your luxurious manor house. That defeats the fucking purpose, right? But they
Right.
also realized that, land is obviously an incredibly valuable resource. It was then, it still is now. They wanted everybody to know that they owned all this land, but they
Right.
would never deign to do something as lowly as farming it for
Yeah.
food, right?
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was the message they were sending everybody else. They're like, you see all this land I got? I don't even
I
farm
don't even
shit
use
on
it.
that. I don't even use it. I don't need to use it. I got people to do that for me. I got farmers. All right. They know their place. They got, they work in my lands too, but these lands around my house,
So
I don't need it. I don't need it for nothing. I just got it because I want it. And that was a way to like prove that by just making it a
having it
lawn just
right.
filled with grass and
So
not using it for
essentially,
anything useful. Right.
right. So essentially, they build their big ass fucking nice house, right? The inside's fucking immaculate, but we have to make the outside reflect how much money we have too. And at one point, they did everything they could do to the outside of the house, and we're like, I can't prove that I hit any harder. And they go, well, fuck, we got to cut down all this grass because that's that's the next level before we get into like an ornate gold mailbox to show how hard I hit.
Right. Pretty much. And so the first people to have these big, like meticulously maintained lawns were landowning nobility, right? In Western Europe and shit. And, or at least that's the Western version of the history. A lot of times I feel like almost all the time you find out that China had been doing some shit we claimed for like 500 years before we ever started doing it. But we're just kind of, as a society, we're like, well, that don't count. Like they got their stuff, but we know what we're about, right?
It's
like
Old Testament, New Testament. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're like, yeah, we don't fucking read that shit.
No, but so anyway, in terms of Western civilization, that's the story of it. And obviously, like with a lot of things we talked about, so this becomes a symbol of wealth and of status, right? So other people want people like in, the classes below, like what would be middle class people, merchants and shit who were not high born, whatever, people that wanted to like emulate the nobility. They wanted big yards too, right? Everybody did because it's like, oh, I want to show that I'm doing well or whatever. Big lawns, excuse me.
I might not could have a nice house, but I can at least manicure this motherfucker.
And what made that attainable was when like lawnmowers became a thing. In the 1800s, like in early 18, obviously they weren't running on gas and shit yet. It was the old school type of lawnmower, right? In the 1800s they came out with. And so now it gives any regular Joe the ability to like maintain a lawn, right? And so that's what started the sort of just the cultural trend of if you're a homeowner, whatever, you got to have a nice lawn, right? It propagated out from there, basically.
Right.
Is pretty much the origin of it. That's how it came to be a thing.
Did you know my dad is missing a finger because of a lawnmower?
No, but I mean, I'm pretty sure that's like in the Georgia Boy Scouts, that's a badge you get.
Yeah, it was back when, a very short story, it was back when the lawnmowers were just the rotating blade that you pushed, like
that's the types I'm talking about.
Yeah. I figured it was. That's what made me think of this. But like, he was like 2 years old and he was just out in the yard trying to fucking do it. And he fell forward and it actually cut these two fingers off, but they were able to sew this one back on. And now he has half of a finger right here. So anytime Dad wanted to tell me it was 2:30, he would be like, I would say, what time is it? And he would be like, it's,
oh, that works. Yeah, I like that. But before those came out in the 1800s, like to maintain a lawn, you had to either have, indentured servants, a shitload of goats, right? Or a whole lot of time and a scythe, right? And like people like working people, they didn't have none of those things, right? So like you couldn't have a lawn. And so the invention of the early lawnmower is what led to the propagation of like lawns being a thing the way they are. But back in the day when they became a thing, I said like it started amongst the wealthy and it was a status symbol. What always happens with these status symbols amongst the wealthy when they become a thing, it becomes a pissing contest.
Competition.
Right? Like, always. They got to compete. I'm fancier than you. No, I'm fancier than you, motherfucker. Of course, none of them talk like that, but you know what I mean. And so that happened with lawns too, right? And the first thing I want to talk about is actually, no, we'll do this one first. So like one example is topiary. You know what topiary is? You do know.
Yeah, it's like you make a bush look like a ball.
Exactly. Or an elephant or whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Topiary. Yeah. And that actually apparently topiary as an art form dates back to the Romans, as many things do.
That checks
and
out.
none other than Julius Caesar is credited with popularizing the idea of topiary, right? Because he was introduced by this guy Gaius Matthias Calvinus,
Oh yeah, Gaius
whatever.
Matthias Calvinus. Yeah,
Everybody knows him, yeah, right.
yeah.
Who was like
GTC.
he was like the Sugar Hill Gang of making bushes into animals, right? Like he was the Grandmaster Flash of making a bush hippo, right?
Use the same shears to cut fucking Caesar's piss poor hair too. Guarantee it.
Yeah. So Caesar met that guy. Caesar adopted it. When Caesar adopted it, it became a big thing, and topiary was like very popular back then. And then the Roman Empire dies out. Topiary kind of gets lost too. It comes back in the Renaissance, like a lot of things did, right? And so it became, again, a way to like, no, what you got? Bunch of squares and pyramids and shit. I got lions, motherfucker, lions and eagles and all kinds of bush fauna, right? Like it was a way to flex, right? In the 1700s, it became passe for some reason. Like it just fell out of fashion, right? Like it became tacky to do it in the 1700s. And it's not that it had a massive resurgence. It's not like every rich person is making a fucking, shining maze or a flock of Canadian geese out of their bushes. But to the extent that it came back at all, it was brought back by none other than Walt Disney in Disney World in the 50s and 60s. He brought topiary to America's main stage because they made all their trademark characters, Mickey and Minnie and them, out of bushes and shit at Disney World. And that's credited with kind of like bringing it back to the fore in as much as it ever got brought back to the fore. But in terms of the flexing and the competition amongst rich people with their lawns, the best thing that I found, and I got to give a shout out to our former producer Russ here. He I hope he's doing well wherever he's at. He actually mentioned this to us on an early episode, and neither you nor I knew what he was talking about. and he proved to us its existence, but because we didn't know what he was talking about, we were just like, well, that's wild, and we moved on, right?
We don't know something, don't hit.
But in the exactly, I ain't going to talk about something I don't know about. That wouldn't be like me.
That wouldn't be my whole career.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, but anyway, and it's the OG garden gnomes, which were, garden gnomes are a thing, right? You got your little gnomes in your garden. Yeah, those used to be real people. They were garden hermits, garden hobos, as it were. A hobo in your yard was once considered the height of status amongst the landed gentry in Western Europe. How utterly ridiculous and horrifying is the past at every single turn, right?
Everything.
It's wild.
Do you think that'll make a comeback? Because, some things like, topiary, it was gone, then it came back. Like, do you think there'll ever, like, we're inching ever closer to a somewhat terrible world controlled by 1% of people that like to do horrible things. Do you think fucking garden gnomes as people are going to come back?
I think that I guarantee you that there's people out there like there's like Bezos and Musk and whoever probably would love to have like, a mangy performance artist outside of their house, just at their disposal. Like that would probably hit for them. But I think that for now they know better because like they also would love to just have slaves, right?
Yeah,
but
right.
Like,
yes. Well, then they kind of do, but yes.
Right, but they're not going to pitch, let's bring back slavery. They'll do everything up until that point. But so I think that's where garden hermits, I think they exist in a similar realm right now.
Let me give it to you this way. Have you ever seen Elon Musk's house?
No.
I haven't either, right? I haven't either. And I bet you it's like very heavily guarded. You know what I'm saying? Like he's probably on like some sort of compound. Well, don't you think that if Elon Musk, his house probably really hits, and he's very famous. Don't you think that if we could see it, we would see it right now? My point is,
you mean
what if he's got him?
Good. Yeah. No, I hear you. Because it's like, remember when we did when I did boats and I talked about
Yeah.
the super
Yes.
yachts
The
and
mirrors that
some of the super yachts have mirrors and lasers and stuff, which
Yes.
disable cameras and shit from like being. So it's like we're not even allowed to gaze
And-
upon their hits.
And Elon
right?
Musk has more money than any of those fucking people.
Right. So yeah, you might be right. He might have some garden hobos, dude. I wouldn't doubt it.
Canon.
But well, would you just knowing how ridiculous the past is now, these people were like, do you have a guess at like why that became a thing? It's all right if you don't, because it doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Okay, I was about to say, like, if it's probably the way you're pitching it to me means that there's really no practical reason for it, so there's no way logically I'm going to get to it.
Like shit that has no practical reason is like that's some of the shit that
That's
hits
their
the
whole
most for them.
thing. Yeah,
that's their whole thing, right? Like
I
that's
have
how
no
you know
idea.
you hit.
Yeah.
So they're in this pissing contest with each other about whose lawn hits the hardest, who had the better lawn art and stuff like that. And so they started getting into, they'd have these expansive, ornate gardens and all this stuff. And they would use them to like reflect not just how much they hit, but also they'd try to use them as like commentaries on the human condition. Like, oh, this represents happiness or fulfillment or whatever, that type of thing. And they realized it was hard to use stuff that hits to represent the human condition of melancholy, right? They wanted to represent melancholy as well, right? Because the elites at that time viewed melancholy, an introspective form of sadness. They viewed it as like a mark of intelligence. Right?
Yeah,
They romanticized
it.
Exactly. Like that old boy Diogenes or whatever.
We
that
still do.
Hobo philosopher I talked about. Sort of like that. They looked at it like that. So they wanted something in their lawn.
I think we still do to a degree.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Yeah, I agree. You're right. They wanted something in their lawn that represented that, and that's how they landed on yard hobos, right? So they wanted somebody who looked kind of like Diogenes out there, who people would look at and be like, that poor wise bastard, right? Like
in a barrel.
Well, in a barrel, like what's he know that we don't, right? So like that's what they were trying to get at. So they would put these they put these ads in the papers at the time, right? Seeking, Earl seeking yard vagrant, right?
Earl seeking
Earl seeking Earl. Yeah, right. And this is from an article I found in All That's Interesting, it's called, and this is a quote from one of these ads, right? This is a direct quote from one of these ads. It says, he shall be provide the applicant, if they are successful in their application, shall be provided with a Bible, optical glasses, because you got to have glasses if you're going to be wise, right?
Reading the Bible, yeah.
A Bible, optical glasses, a mat for his feet, nice. A hassock for his pillow. I guess it's like a old-timey pillowcase. I don't know.
Yeah.
An hourglass for a timepiece. Water for his beverage. Nice. Better than nothing for his beverage. Like, and food from the house. He must wear a camlet robe and never, ever, under any circumstances, I'm quoting this directly, must he be permitted to cut his hair, beard, or nails, stray beyond the limits of our master's grounds, or exchange one word with any of the servants or people. So they've got to be.
He can't even talk to the servants. Jesus Christ!
Because then he might
appear to not be melancholy.
He's a dumbass. You know what I mean? Like you can't let him talk. You got fucking Diogenes or wore out, shot out Charles Darwin looking motherfucker, like meandering around your lawn. But then he comes up and he's like, "You got any bugs to eat?" or whatever. And it's like a fucking.
You need some extra mud. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Got a nice mud over here. Right. Like it kind of ruins the
mystique.
Allure, the mystique. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And
oh god damn.
So they they'd have a little shack or like a cave, it says, somewhere on the property.
Cave,
That's where
yeah.
they lived. And they were offered up to guests as a silent physical symbol of solitude and the ever nearness of death, right?
My
The
God.
key function of their job was
Say that
not
again.
interacting.
Say that last part
The,
again.
a
The
physical symbol of solitude and the ever nearness of death. So
Banksy.
yeah,
Yeah. That's
right. It says
amazing.
their key job function was not interacting with guests, right? Like
I'm
that was the
qualified,
main thing they
by
had to
the
do.
way.
They just stand out there with like a knotty wooden cane shaking slightly like this, while their beard like gently blows in the wind, and they stare in the general direction of the visitors with 1,000-yard stare, and people are like, God damn, he's fucking nailing it.
Yeah.
That is a melancholic motherfucker right there. I gotta get me one of them. Where'd you get him? So wise, right? And then as time went on, people eventually realized, like, hey, this is kind of fucked up. And then so they were like, well, we got to have something out there. And that's when they started producing like
Actual gnome.
ceramic garden
Yeah.
gnomes and stuff. Yeah, to like fill that
That is
slot, but without having a
unbelievable.
beating heart.
I can't believe
Hopes and dreams.
Russ brought what you just set up and we were like, fuck this. Because that's insane. Like that's truly insane.
Yeah. So one other thing I'm just going to say real briefly, what they're doing now, what rich people are doing now when it comes to lawns is that they're, or I'm not saying they all are, but a big thing in that world is trophy trees.
Okay.
There's a dude in Miami whose whole entire job is procuring these trophy trees for rich people. So it's like,
Can I guess what it is?
yeah, sure.
Okay. It's where someone finds out that there's a tree that really hits somewhere else and they move it like a house.
Yes, I mean, yeah,
Really nice.
yeah, you pretty much nailed it. Yeah, you get it. So yeah, that's exactly what they do.
That's great.
Because it's like also, they build a new house or whatever, they take over this mansion, and it's like, I need some ancient trees. You know what I mean? That's the one thing this is missing. And it's like, and that's the thing. It's like, I don't care how rich you are, you can't make a tree grow to 100 feet overnight, right? So they were just like, well, just go dig up somebody else's tree and bring it to me. And that's exactly what happens. They'll pay up to $250,000 or more to transport these old oak trees or whatever else from their original location to their yard. And they dig them up by the roots, every single root, making sure not to kill the tree. They get cranes and shit. They transport them by boat up river, however else, and then replant it in rich people's yards, which I just thought was kind of interesting and also ridiculous.
Not only is it interesting, it's actually remarkable that it works. You know what I mean? Like that a tree, because a tree is a fucking living thing, and like obvious, like, I don't know, man, that's kind of crazy that you could take it from somewhere that it's used to a certain soil and that's how this tree fucking grows. And then you could just take it, put its roots down, and ostensibly the tree just wakes up and goes, like he's back on again. You know what I mean? Because how does that not kill it from? I mean, if we're to believe that trees breathe and stuff like that, it was choked out for at least the duration of the trip. That's fucking wild, man.
It is. Trees are tough, baby. So before we move on, just briefly, because you and I both want to, get back to our children and stuff, and I want to hear about Nebuchadnezzar. In terms of in terms of trashy people, again, it's not a lawn, it's a yard, but yards hit for trash and rednecks too, primarily the mowing of yards. Rednecks love mowing. I used to wonder what that was about, but I always loved mowing too. And I one of the rationales I had later, it was like, we briefly touched on it earlier, like, oh, I'm glad to be here doing this while she's like, if you're out mowing, it's like a break kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
You just go out and you can just zone out. You just mow the yard, and there's something nice. There's something zen.
Dude, my dad would mow a freshly mown lawn when I was a kid, and I never understood it. I was like, you just did it yesterday. What the fuck?
Yeah, but trash also have other things in their yards. One of my all-time favorite Foxworthy joke, if you might be a redneck jokes, if you've ever mowed your yard and found a car, you might be a redneck. Because like that's some of the hallmarks of white trash yards.
Yeah.
Old beat up car that don't work, a grimy ass play set that their children are 10 plus years too old for,
Yep.
right? Deflated sports balls laying about the
Flamingos.
place. Flamingos, yeah, like various accoutrement in order to trash a yard up. It's just something about like they like to mow the yard, but picking up the yard, not a big fan of. You
The
know what I mean?
car I kind of get a little bit where it's like, as often it was a car that used to maybe kind of hit,
That's what
like,
happened. Well, it's not that it hit. We had one of those at my house in Salina.
yeah,
It was my first vehicle, 89 Nissan pickup, and I loved that truck. But then, like, sometime after I moved out, whatever, it just broke down and stopped working. And that
leave it
did
there.
that in the yard.
Yeah.
And then it just stayed in the yard,
And just leave it
like for a long time. It's not there anymore. But yeah, we're back.
Oh, okay. You froze. I'm sorry.
That's all right. You froze to me, but that's okay. I said that
Okay.
just the trip. My first truck ended up being a yard vehicle
Yeah.
at my house.
Yeah, it's one of those where you're just like, well, we'll eventually fix it or do something with it. And then it just sits there and you don't. And you're like, well, at least I want people to know that we used to have a car. You know what I mean?
But dude,
So
the
it's just,
yard hits, man. The yard is like
yard
it's
does hit.
cornhole. Because I
Oh,
did do an episode on yard games, right, and the
yeah.
overlap between those. But it's, yeah, like dude, you got your buddies over because there's a football game either now or later. Either way, before or after the football game, you end up in the yard drinking beers, throwing stuff at other stuff, or just standing in a circle, King of the Hill style, standing in a line and just talking shit or whatever. It's just like the yard is just the
Well,
yard's a nice place to be. I love a
dude,
good yard or
speaking
a
of
bad
yards,
yard.
all yards are good.
Mhm.
Tomorrow I get to have a yard day. Me and Amber actually, I didn't even know you were talking about this, but we're having a yard day tomorrow. So, and this is normal, everything's fine, but our baby is just a touch jaundiced, because he was
Yeah,
early,
that
and that's just how
happens.
it
Yeah.
happens, and it's fine. And we went to the doctor today, and they're like, it's not so bad that we need to put him in an incubator, but it's supposed to be good weather tomorrow, so maybe open a window, get him some sunlight or whatever. Well, it's supposed to be really pretty. So Amber was like, hey, what about tomorrow? We just take the baby out and hang out outside in the yard. And she was like, I can sit there with him. We can take turns holding him, and you can like practice your chip shots in the yard. So I'm going to be hanging out with my son, hitting golf shots in the yard in the sun tomorrow. And I've genuinely not been this excited about something in my life because it's a yard. Yards hit.
Yards do hit. Universally agreed upon. Yards do hit. Yeah, well, I think yards hit is a great place to end the conversation on yards and move into Nebuchadnezzar. This history Professor Cho on the subject of Nebuchadnezzar. He's from the Bible, right? I'm
Yes.
gonna be honest. The main thing I know about Nebuchadnezzar is that Morpheus's ship was named after him in the Matrix. That's genuinely the first thing that comes to my head. If you say the word Nebuchadnezzar, I think of Morpheus's ship. That's the first thing I think of.
Well, that's good that you don't
So
know.
tell me about him.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely love to. So, born to King Nabopolassar and Queen Nitocris, Nebuchadnezzar II was the longest reigning king of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, ruling from
The
605 BC.
Keanu,
Yes.
Babylonian Empire,
Oh, it
as it were.
works. I love
Mhm.
that. Ruling from 605 BC to 562 BC. His name, this was interesting because I was like, Nebuchadnezzar, what the fuck? What's the translation for that? His name means, oh God, Nebu, defend my firstborn son. That's what Nebuchadnezzar means, which is,
Who's Nebu?
I don't know. I should have looked at
Is that just like the dad's bodyguard? He was so freaked out when the baby was born. He was just like, Nebuchadnezzar. I don't know. I did that kind of Italian-y. I don't know why, but
hey, Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah.
This is how sleep deprived I am, because in normal notes I would have been like, you need to look up who Nebu is, but I definitely didn't do that. So the word Babylon gets thrown out a lot, like it's in a lot of movies, like, oh, we're going to Babylon, and fucking Babylon is like used as it's like I guess a synonym for some place that hits, you know.
Yeah, it's like
But just
the first great city of human civilization,
yes.
right? Is
Yeah, and it
Babylon.
was
Yeah.
yes, and like reading about it, it's like it's kind of like how I would write Wakanda. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
back then, everything was so fucking primitive. Like back in those days, usually even the most civilized thing to our standards now would be extremely primitive, right? But like Babylon did not seem like that. Like it was like a sort of Wakanda, like a future town. And here's where this is, just in case because I didn't fucking know this. I should have known because it's Bible stuff. But the Babylonian Empire stretches from the Persian Gulf in the east to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. It included
Mhm.
modern day Iraq,
Mhm.
Iran, Syria, Jordan, and Israel, a place that has been conflict free from
Mhm.
the dawn of time. Nothing really to
Generally
report on
recognized
there.
as a utopia to which we should all make our aim. Strive. That's what I was looking for.
Exactly.
Yes.
So, so as you can imagine, Babylon was a super hierarchical society. You know, you had the kings and all his lords, and then like unless you were like one of the textile, like a hardcore, I own the factory textile merchant. You were a peasant who tended the wheat fields until, as you like to say, until you slipped in some mud and coughed to death. Right,
Mhm.
that was
Mhm.
pretty much
You'll
their.
have that.
They did have a badass army though, which to me it goes without saying when you're talking about a place that's referred to as an empire. But they had a wonderful army. They conquered many territories, including Judea, Egypt, and tell me if you know what this place is. Assyria? Maybe that's now
I'm not
Syria.
saying that I'm right. I always pronounce that in my head as Assyria, but
Assyria. Okay, that's
I
how an
have no idea
Italian
if
would
that's
say
right.
Syria.
Yeah, but yeah, yeah, Assyria. Yeah,
Assyria.
it might be Assyria. I don't know, but yeah, I've just assumed somewhere around where Syria be nowadays. I know that
Yeah, exactly.
they were also like an ancient civilization. That's around that same time. That's all I know about them.
Right. So to sort of make Nebuchadnezzar fit with the theme of the show, he was obviously the king, and he was one of those like I feel like there are kings who like okay, in Game of Thrones, Robert Baratheon is of course he has all the everything at his disposal, but you wouldn't really call him like a fancy king. He was more like of a conquering king. You know, like of
Oh yeah.
course he had the whores and he had the wine and he had the kingdom, but it didn't seem like Robert Baratheon like he wasn't someone that was like, give me all the frills and stuff. He was just like, give me some pussy and some mead and go shut the
And a
fuck up.
turkey leg. Yeah.
And a turkey leg, right? There was those kings who were like, it was enough for them just to be powerful. But Nebuchadnezzar was one of those like everything will be a monument. We're gonna have fucking gold. We're gonna do all this shit. He was the type of dude that like he had, probably one of the first dudes in written history, at least for kings, that had like a menagerie of exotic animals around him
Mm,
at all times, like he was like he got a tiger guy, he got a zebra guy.
right.
This is the desert, I assume iguanas, you know what I mean? He
Bro,
got
he was a real trendsetter in that regard. Because
agreed.
to
Agreed.
this
Yeah.
day, people that hit, they want a menagerie.
Well,
You can ask Young Thug about it.
that
All right, they
that
want a menagerie.
that's what I was going to, yeah, Liger. That's what I was going to
Hmm.
bring up is that, like, I don't obviously know that he was the first one, but he's definitely one of the first ones who sets the precedent for I'm a king. I need a giraffe, or an
Right,
elephant or
exactly.
all that. Like that,
Yeah,
it's sort of like the lawn. It's like, I know my kingdom hits and all that, but I got to go a step further. I need to have a monkey. I need a monkey,
yeah. I think
Um,
they have like wild hippos in Colombia today because Pablo Escobar was like,
yep,
"I
they
need some
do.
hippos around this motherfucker."
Yep.
I mean, like
Yep.
I hit and people know I hit, but they'll really know I hit if I got some hippos out here. So
I mean,
bring me some hippos. And then he
I
got
say,
hippos.
I say that's 100% true, but I'm also fairly certain it was you that told me that. So maybe it's not. But,
Yeah, I don't know.
but
I heard that somewhere. Who the hell knows?
he was also, though, like, we in a very early episode, I want to say that it might have been episode 1 that I talked about Henry the Eighth. Was that episode 1? Who knows? It doesn't matter.
It was a very early episode for sure.
Yeah, I was talking about Henry the Eighth in regards of like how he was a king, but at the same time he was also like very artistic, and like, he composed music and he painted, and like he had other skills. He wasn't just like the my daddy was the king, therefore, like he was kind of a rad dude. And Nebuchadnezzar was apparently similar, but his like art was architecture. He was apparently like very gifted with like how to build shit, how to draw stuff up, how to make blueprints. It's said that he was the architect of the Hanging Gardens of Babylon,
Gardens.
which I don't.
Yes.
Yes,
One of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Yeah.
that is exactly right, Trey.
I've
And
always
just in
wondered.
case
I've always wanted to be able to visualize those in my head. I've always been fascinated with the wonders of the
right,
world.
right there, that's what they say they look like.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty sweet.
Dude, it's fucking very sweet when you think about the time that it was and like how many slaves
Well,
had to
I was about to say, as we've discussed before, the answer is always slaves. Like if you got enough slaves to throw at something, you can really get some shit done.
Yeah.
Even back then.
So he was known for his religious reforms back in the day. Like, so Babylon was a very polytheistic world, which this is why this is even in the Bible. This is why Babylon's brought up in the Bible, is for contrast. Like, they point out that like this is a bad place because they were polytheistic, meaning that they believed in a bunch of different gods. And it was like reported that they believed in upwards of like 2,200 gods. Like they were, it was like the Romans and shit like that. Like there wasn't a god that did everything. Everything had its own god. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, right.
the sun was a god, the water had a god, all that shit. And so he got really heavy into this god called Marduk, which he was associated with the planet Jupiter. His symbol was a spade, or oftentimes a hoe, which represented him as the god of agriculture and fertility, which is like, frankly, not badass. Don't really hit for me.
I mean, fucking is badass.
Yeah, fucking is badass. Yeah, fucking is badass. That's for sure.
Yeah,
He
ain't badass, but
but yeah,
having a bunch of hoes.
Dude, that's 100% true. Way different things. But yeah, both badass for sure. So while I was reading about the Marduk feller earlier today, I came across a quote from somebody, or a passage that was like, regardless of the fact that Nebuchadnezzar was a Marduk man, he was and I'm paraphrasing, but like, regardless of the fact that Nebuchadnezzar was a Marduk man, he was still tolerant of his subjects' religions and allowed them to worship as they please. But I know of at least one story from the Bible that very much proves this completely wrong, and I will share it later. But first, let's get into what he did to the Jews. All right. So, which I think this, by the way, when we were talking about, Iran and all that area of how there's like a lot of grief and strife, like if the Bible is to be believed, it started with this motherfucker. Like, this is kind of the linchpin of like all of that shit. So the king of Judea at the time was this dude named, and I know I'm getting this wrong, but Jehoiachin, and he was super young, inexperienced, and Nebuchadnezzar was just like, okay, you know what? It's go time, motherfucker. So he takes over Jerusalem, which that's the capital of Judea. He then installed a puppet king named Zedekiah, who was forced to pay tribute to Babylon all the time. So like he's Judea's king, but realistically, it's like, when, George Bush was the president, it was Dick Cheney. You know what I'm saying? So this dude eventually is like, man, I'm treating my people wrong. This is fucking bullshit. So he rebelled and joined forces with Egypt. Was like, look, I'm Egypt. Y'all got my back. Nebuchadnezzar's trying to pull some shit, but if we join forces, y'all are Egypt. Y'all are badass. And Nebuchadnezzar fucked both them up. Like, he was just like, oh, okay, right on. You brought your friends. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So
is this your boy? Quote Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah. So Nebuchadnezzar like exiles all the Jews from Judea. Like he takes over
Classic
and
move. Yeah.
right, the Jews being exiled, and this is where like you could like one could argue that like they're sort of I'm just like their whole
Yeah.
God damn it. How it's so hard to talk about the Jews sounding
It
like I
is.
sound. You know what I mean?
It's a bit of a
But
minefield. Yeah, I know. But yeah, no, he was also a trendsetter in that way. Trendsetter in that way.
okay.
Like what fucking menageries and exiling the
Telling the
Jews. He really
yeah.
set the standard because, yeah, two things that would have real staying power in the history of civilization.
When I say this, please understand that I'm on the side of the Jews.
Of course.
Like, this sort of started the Jewish cultural identity of being exiled and oppressed. And like, they deserve it.
Nebuchadnezzar is to blame for the millennia long history of Jewish oppression.
Now, listen,
because I've always kind of wondered, I've always sort of in my head been like, man, what is everybody's deal with the Jews? Like,
well,
people just, the Jews have really been put through it. Where did this come from? You're telling me it's Nebuchadnezzar who was like, hey, y'all, we got to do something about this. And then the whole rest of the world for 3,000 years was like, he's right. We do.
I'm not saying that. The Bible is saying that, right?
Right. Okay.
And the Bible is saying that, which means it could be horseshit, because I want to tell you this. Basically, take all of this with a grain of salt, because with Nebuchadnezzar, whereas like Caesar was talked about in the Bible, but there's also records of Caesar existing outside of the Bible, basically every major talking about of Nebuchadnezzar is in the Bible. Like, that's the only shit that we know about Nebuchadnezzar is from the Bible, and it's from the book. Like, he was in several books, but there's the book of Nebuchadnezzar, and Nebuchadnezzar wrote that shit. And I will explain. It is, but I'll explain to you why he was allowed to do it for the Bible here in a second. I know we got to go.
He's the king, right?
He is, but like, so I told you.
Also, I love that you said all the historical talkings about were from, like,
Yeah.
records.
But I'm saying it's all from the. Yeah, I'm tired.
I know, but I'm just saying that hit for me. You're like, every instance of talking about that this motherfucker has was from the Bible.
Yes, you said it better than me. Or you said it exactly the same way I said it. So here's the thing. He exiles the Jews. He goes over and he's like, Judea don't hit, Jews don't hit, whatever. But he did take one thing from the Jewish people with him. He goes over there, and for the first time ever, he discovers monotheism, right? He gets over there and he is astounded by the fact that they believe it's just one motherfucker. And he's like, wait, no, we have like 2,000. And they're like, no, it's just one motherfucker. And instead of being like, no, that ain't real, it sort of like gave him some insight. And he was like, oh my God, it's one person. God is one person.
Easier. Like, that's instead of praying to this dude whenever I farm, and this dude whenever I drink wine, and this dude whenever I fucking have a baby. Now I can just pray to the same dude all the time.
Yes.
Thank you, Jews. Now die. Is that what he said?
See, I mean, in Yiddish, yeah, but so you would think that you were like, oh my God, Nebuchadnezzar found out that there was only one true God and he was the God of everything. Therefore, he started worshiping the Jewish God. No, he decided, yes, there is only one God. That makes the most sense. And that God is me. I'm God.
Yeah.
So he comes back to his people and he's like, by the way, I went on a darkness retreat.
Guess what the Jews said? Y'all don't believe this.
I went on a darkness retreat in Israel, and turns out I'm God. So he goes back, and where he used to be very tolerant of everybody's religion because it seemed like they were all making it up. He's like, you, this God, that God, what the fuck ever. He then forced everyone to stop worshiping all the gods that they worship and instead worship him. Like, he made golden statues of himself, and he made everybody pray to him and shit. And this is actually where the most famous Nebuchadnezzar story comes from that I know you know about. I know you know about it, but you probably didn't know it was Nebuchadnezzar. So as I said, he commanded all
False
the people in his
idols or
kingdom.
something?
It's no, it see that it's like the golden calf. That's an opposite
Yeah.
one, but it's similar here. So as I
Okay.
said, he commanded all the people in his kingdom to bow down and worship a golden statue that he'd built, but he's forcing all these people to worship this golden statue. But 3 young Jewish men named Shadrach, Meshach, and
And a billy goat.
Abednego,
Yeah.
and Abednego. Oh, I'm so glad you know that. That's
I only
great.
know it because we talked about it on our other podcast years ago. I was like,
Oh, I told it to you.
y'all are telling me there's a billy goat. I mean, I know there's
Yeah.
billy goats in the Bible, but it's two Jews and a billy goat. That's fucking. I think that's a morning zoo show in West Palm Beach. Fucking, but like, what are we talking about? But yeah, no, I ever since you first told me that, I've always remembered.
Yeah.
I didn't remember the last Shadrach, Meshach, and
Abednego.
Abednego.
Like
Okay.
a bed no go.
N-word. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. So these 3 young Jewish men named Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were just like, no, we're not worshiping you because we believe in, the Holy Father God. We got our own shit going on. So Nebuchadnezzar was pissed and he threatened to throw them into a fiery furnace if they didn't obey him. But they were just like, you know what? Fuck you. We'd rather die than worship your fucking gold cow or whatever it is you got going on. So this pisses Nebuchadnezzar off, and he immediately ordered the furnace to be heated up 7 times hotter than usual, and he threw Shadrach, Meshach, and the billy goat in the fire. Well, much to his chagrin, Trey, they weren't even a little bit burnt up. When he looked in there, they were just kind of hanging out, but instead of only being 3 dudes in there, Nebuchadnezzar swears that he saw a 4th figure in the fire, and he knew that that must have been their God, right? So he's blown away. He caught the vapors, whatever the fuck it is you got back then, immediately ordered them to come out of the furnace. When they got out of the fire, they weren't hurt, and Nebuchadnezzar got on his knees and was like, I acknowledge the power of your God, right? And then he was like, okay, I was wrong. This is the one true God, and anyone who doesn't believe that, I'll throw you in a fucking furnace. So he just went right back to what he was doing, except for he was like,
Right.
yeah,
Except he got it right this time. He had
he
the right
did.
God this time.
The
Okay,
God
listen,
of,
I'm sorry. This is like, and I know it sounds dumb talking about a Bible story, but like, clearly, no.
of course,
Right?
no. Of course,
Right.
no.
Like,
Of fucking course, no.
like, no,
Not even a little bit.
that very didn't happen. What are we
No.
like? They forgot to light the Jew furnace or whatever. Like fucking, I don't know what
Dude,
happened, or they just straight up made it up. But
they made
yeah,
it
like
up.
it weren't that.
But that's what I said about when I said that Nebuchadnezzar wrote his part of the Bible. It's because he was writing fucking propaganda. Like of course they let him write this. He finally they were like, oh, he's on our side. This fucking king, we'll get him to write this shit. Like whoever it was that was in charge of publishing the first Bible was like, man, we got a lot of chapters by all these motherfuckers that nobody knows. And they were like, hey, I heard you can give $150K to Nebuchadnezzar for a feature. You know what I mean? And so then he wrote his fucking chapter. A lot of it was about how much he hit, but then it was his redemption story or whatever. But dude, of course, none of this shit happened. Matter of fact, if I wasn't so sleep deprived from having a kid, I did have an idea that because none of this really happened, I was going to go full Anastasia 2.0 with this fucking episode. I was like, I can fucking say anything. I know. Yeah. And by the way, one day I will do that, but you won't see it coming, and that's going to be my joy. So yeah, that happened, or that didn't happen. In later years, though, Nebuchadnezzar's his mental health deteriorated, and he was said to have suffered from a condition that made him believe that he was an animal for 7 years. He roamed the earth believing that he was some sort of beast. But that's what some people say, but the Bible account of it is that he was humbled by God for boasting about his achievements, and so God made him think he was a wolf.
A wolf? That's a pretty. You said animal at first. I was going to ask which animal because, like, is that Nebuchadnezzar over there? And he's like, or whatever. But like,
I used wolf because I think it's a funny word.
Oh, so they don't clarify like it?
No,
like,
I don't think so. It could have been
okay.
Yeah, so I was kind of doing the thing there animal. Where I just made it up. Yes, some sort of animal. But it was so great that you got to that point there because I was saving that at the end to be like, by the way, you understand that every single thing that I have just said is probably not true because it's all written in the fucking Bible. But I had fun telling it, and that's Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, it did hit. All right. Well, I guess that does it for us this week. Papa Cho, Big Papa producer. Another good episode, I think. Hope y'all agree. But that's been it for Putting on Airs. We'll be here next week, too. Remember to like, subscribe, tell your friends. What am I forgetting, Joe?
Download. And, hey, get our Amazon specials. They're on Amazon.
They are.
They're on Amazon. Stay fancy, motherfuckers.
Skew.
Here's Lydia Lovelace.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Royalty and rednecks are alike. They both like cutting and picking fights. Biscuits and baked beans where they don't belong. Sit on down with Corey and Trey and learn some fancy shit today. We'll laugh a little even when they're wrong. They'll take you to a magical place where if you call someone a cunt, nobody cares. They keep it debonair at Putting on Airs. Putting on Airs. Putting on Airs.